check on my horse this morning. I was really thinking, oh my gosh, I'm driving over the speed limit and that guy just passed me. Like a good amount of the speed limit. I've been thinking about this a lot the last couple days just because we're having this colic incident. And I think for quite a while I've been convinced that like the mind and the body are connected, and I don't know why we try to separate them, but my horse has had some strange symptoms this week, and that first day I really was like, oh, he's not colicking, because like why would you be running around, he doesn't act like he's colicking, he's running around frantically and yet nothing appears to be wrong, and he was also really twitchy, and but then, once I gave him, once it came back later when there was clearly no stimulus, and then I gave him the Banamine, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, what's more likely, that he is colicking and that he's just in pain and that's why he's like trying to run to escape it, or that he's like having muscle spasms for some unknown reason. The colic is much more likely candidate here, right? Why would he suddenly start having muscle spasms? But what was strange was I could see his body twitching, like kind of like convulsing, and then him wanting to run off, especially in his shoulders. And he was not what I would call sound. But here's what I've been thinking about, and what I thought about after I had given him the meds, was that this horse in the past, I've certainly seen him look unsound because his stomach hurt. This is not the first time. And I've also seen him do similar things. This is very much like the muscle twitching and the shoulder throwing and like the weird kind of spontaneous pawing. That is all very similar to the hiccup incidents that we've had 2 years ago in 2018, where he was having diaphragm spasms. So I'm like, okay, like it turns out we actually that's very similar to what was happening. He did not have the hiccups, but it was very, very similar to that if you think about it from that perspective. So it just obviously that leaves me a lot of room to think and wonder about what it is with this horse. I think it's the weather, right? Because last year we had a good ulcer season. I only had to give him meds for a couple weeks and he didn't really have any symptoms to speak of. But this year has been different in that, his behavior has been so good. And so I've been super hopeful that because he mentally has let go so much, that the ulcers wouldn't be so bad. And it's really hard. I really want the ulcers. This is so terrible. Like, I don't want it to be in his mind at this point instead of physiological. I don't want to have to do this every year for the rest of his life. But it's so clear. This is a week, like almost to the day. It's the exact same week, the 2 years ago that we started ulcer meds. If I look back in my journal, he definitely had some stuff going on this same week last year, although not as bad. But if I think about the weather, this year's weather is 10 degrees hotter than it was last year at this time, and it's been much more windy, and we're having a worse fly season. And I bring all those things up because I think that those are all little things, or maybe they're big things when you are who he is. Those are all things that seem to affect his how his stomach feels and how colicky he feels. And he is definitely one thing that has been driving me and him crazy in the afternoons the last, almost escalating the last couple weeks. I do feel it seems like it's been getting worse to me, but it could be that I've been out here in the afternoons more, except that's not true. I've been out here in the afternoons for the last 2 months. So it does seem like it's been getting worse. Like, he's just been, in terms of his fussiness about the flies, and I've been trying to, all summer, I've been trying to do different things to manage that, because I tend to just think it's about the flies. But then the last 2 weeks, I actually have, it's so weird, I actually have been thinking about that as an anxiety issue, and that he's kind of like weaving in place when he's not doing that with his head. And that head jerk, the thing is the head jerk is very similar to the hiccups, which are very similar to what happened on Monday. So this is just, I've just been thinking about how complicated and twisted up and oh God, it's all so interconnected, right? Because I don't really believe this horse has that much anxiety right now in his life. I mean, you could take his friends out and he's okay. He's been really good about all the different things. He's been so good about letting go. I've really only had one day in the last month where he had a tough day, and it was like maybe 5 minutes worth, 8 minutes. I mean, he let go so quick. So the behavioral stuff is getting so much better, but yet I'm still having some of these physical symptoms, which I think reiterates to me that a lot of this stuff really was physical to start with, which that's a hard, I mean, I guess I just wanted to judge it, and I guess I can't judge it. It's both good and bad. But I just think it's worth like talking about, because something else I've really come to terms with since this year is that this is just a horse that I'm never going to have a diagnosis on. He is going to be a mystery and for the rest of his life, and we'll probably always be wondering, what is it about Wyatt? I mean, we know he has some atypical anatomy in his stomach. We know he's probably injured his shoulder at some point. How much any of those things are factors, we'll never be able to know for sure. But just some really interesting questions. And I guess I always think of it as from a management point of view.